What's up, guys? Welcome back to MMA Prophecies. It's been a while, but I'm back. And right now I'm out with the UFC predictions for Johnny Walker and Magomed Ankalaev. Let's go ahead and start with the prelims. First up is Joshua Van versus Felipe Bunez. Joshua Van actually looked really good in his last fight versus Borjas. Borjas came out kind of pieced up Joshua Van that first round. But Joshua Van really came through those second and third rounds. He did get clipped in that third round, but he showed that he's got a good tank. He's got good boxing when he's able to get his distance. And that's a pretty solid win for Joshua Van. Another solid win, Zhalgas Zhumagulov, even though he's not in the UFC. But yeah, Joshua Van is young. He's only 22, but he's showing a lot of potential. And the last time he fought was in November. So, pretty quick turnaround. But I think he's young and he's staying active. So I do like him. I think he has some potential. And he's actually a favorite versus Felipe Bunez. I think he's like a minus 250 favorite, which makes sense because Felipe Bunez hasn't fought any. The only people he's really fought that were decent in ACA all beat him. This guy's a submission specialist. His boxing and striking isn't that great, although he did get a knockout in his last fight versus Yuma Hariuchi, who is, I think he's like 11-9. And then he had a split decision versus Huascar Cruz, who is 12-11. So that just tells me that this guy hasn't really done well versus, good competition. And I think this is going to be a good matchup with Joshua Van. So I'm going to go with Joshua Van in this one. I think he's going to be able to, outstrike him. He's going to have a better tank. I think Felipe Bunez's takedowns are not that great, and I think Joshua Van's going to get it done. All right. So next up, we got Nicholas Mota versus Tom Nolan. So Nicholas Mota coming off a pretty bad loss versus Trey Ogden. Consider no contest, but everyone knows what happened. He got pieced up by Trey Ogden's jabs. And Trey Ogden, I think, is just starting to get into a striking groove. But, Nicholas Mota has not had a good UFC career, in my opinion, so far. He went up against Manuel Torres. He was doing well in that first round, and then he just got completely obliterated. He got knocked out by Jim Miller, who's almost 40 years old, in the second round. That just should not be happening. So we can see that if Nicholas Mota does not finish you off in that first round, especially versus UFC competition, it's not going to be very good. And Tom Nolan, although he hasn't, proven himself versus good competition yet, he looks really good. He looks really good. His striking looks good. He's really young. His tank he looks like he's got really good cardio, good takedown defense. I haven't seen him get hit in a single fight, and I've watched like 4 of his fights. So I think this guy has a lot of potential, and I think his style is going to be really difficult for Nicholas Mota to handle, because Nicholas Mota has struggled with guys with good tanks who apply pressure with good striking. And even though Tom Nolan hasn't had great competition, fought great competition, I think he's going to step up, and I think he can definitely beat Nicholas Mota quite easily here. I think the odds, let me go ahead and log into the odds real quick. But I think he's a sizable favorite. I think he's a very sizable favorite, actually. I think he's like minus 350. So would I take Tom Nolan minus 350? Or minus 335. It's close. It's close. I'm not quite sure if I want to do that. Just because I've taken, I never like to go with people who aren't proven yet. But I do think he's going to win. I don't, but if he gets clipped, who knows, right? You never know. All right. So yeah, Tom Nolan on that one. And for the third fight, Weston Wilson versus John Silva. Yeah, Weston Wilson hasn't looked good at all. His striking looks very, like everyone says, he looks like a very poor Stephen Thompson. He's just chin up in the air. Does not really have a good base, so I can see him getting taken down a ton in the UFC. You know, chin in the air, bad chin. His strikes are not very good or powerful. He's nowhere near, you know, man, and he's fought so much too, and he's 34. He's not getting any younger. Whereas Gian Silva looks much better on the feet. Much more crisp, much more athletic, keeps his head down. Really good power when he does land. Takes his time, good cardio. I'm 100% going with Gian Silva here, but the odds are like minus 1100. Yeah, I don't see how Weston Wilson can win this one. He's got to get lucky, I think. But next fight, we're going with Farid Basharat versus Taylor Lapilus. So Taylor Lapilus, just coming off squeaking by a win off Logren, who honestly Logren is striking not very good. His wrestling's okay. He's been up against Cage Warriors, which is not very good competition. And Logren was still able to press him and take him down quite a few times. Farid Basharat is going to be much more difficult to deal with than Laughlin or Logren. Farid has much better striking. Farid has pretty good cardio, although we've seen that he can fade just a little bit versus Damon Blackshear, but Damon Blackshear I think is tougher than Taylor Lapilus. Farid coming off 3 wins in a row. I think his striking, his wrestling is going to, favor this matchup against Taylor Lapilus. So I'm going to go with Farid Basharat. What are the odds here? Let me see. Minus 275. I mean, Taylor Lapilus still has pretty good boxing. He's pretty solid. It's just with the takedowns that I'm concerned about. Farid though, is he proven yet? I mean, Damon is a good win. Besides that, I'm gonna go with Farid. But if Taylor could keep him on the end of his punches and avoid the takedowns, I can see Taylor potentially winning this. But I do think this is going to go the distance. So that might be a live prop here. Let's go ahead and check it out. Yeah, minus 220 to go to the distance. So I do like, I mean, it seems pretty good. I might sprinkle a little bit on that. But I'm going to favor Farid here. Minus 275, not really, I don't really see any value in that. Maybe you can convince me otherwise. I do want to see Farid more proven, though. But up next, Marcus McGee versus Gaston Bolanos. Marcus McGee has looked really good. His striking looks really good. He flows. He knows how to move with the punches. I don't really see him get hit a lot. He looks like he has pretty good takedowns, and he looks really athletic, right? 2-0 in his first couple of wins. JP Bay's not a huge win. Journey Newsome, not a big win. I think they're just kind of feeding this guy at this point, trying to build him up. But he's got really good power. 7 KOs. He's finished pretty much everyone. Gaston Bolanos doesn't really look that great anywhere. He just looks like an overall pretty solid MMA fighter. But even versus worse competition, he hasn't done well, right? I mean, he lost versus Chris Hatley, Daniel Carey in Bellator, and then after beating Daniel Carey one more time, he gets accepted to the UFC. But yeah, I mean, even Gaston Bolanos, I think the only way he would be beating Marcus McGee if he had a big submission or wrestling advantage, and I don't see that. He's got 6 wins by KO, knockout. I think Marcus McGee is going to piece this guy up on the feet. I really do. Am I willing to put money on Marcus McGee at minus 230? Honestly, I like it. I think the style favors Marcus quite a bit. So I might I did put a little bit of money on Marcus money line. I just don't see Gaston being able to to do much. I see Gaston maybe grinding him up against the fence and trying to win that way, but I think Marcus is too athletic and going to be able to counter that. So I'm going to go with Marcus, and I do like the line on Marcus, minus 230. Next up, Matthew Semmelsberger versus Preston Parsons. I'm going to go with Matthew Semmelsberger. I think he's got good striking. He's really powerful. He's coming off, I mean, some really close losses versus Jeremiah Wells and Uros Medic. Uros is a pretty good striker. Jeremiah Wells is really tough too. He's got good takedowns. But Matthew Semmelsberger did beat Jake Matthews. Did lose to Alex Morono. Can't really fault him for that. Alex is always tough. But he's beat several guys. He's been in the UFC for quite a while. I like his power. I like his patience on the feet. But he does tend to fade in the later rounds, which can be a big problem for him if Preston gets to that, is able to implement his pressure style in that second and third round. What I don't like about Preston Parsons, he just gets hit so often. He leaves his chin up in the air. That's what comes with this pressure fighting. And he lost to Trevin Giles, who is honestly not that great. He's been kind of like, he's had some good wins, but overall he hasn't really looked too spectacular. Trevin Giles' gas tank not that great overall. And if Trevin Giles is going to piece you up, I'm afraid of what Matthew Semmelsberger is going to be able to do to you. And Preston has 2 KOs, right? He got knocked out by D-Rod in that first round. So I'm going to go with Matthew Semmelsberger in that first round. But again, Matthew's shown that he can fade in later rounds, and Preston Parsons does really well with that. So, it's a tough call. Let me see what the line is here. Matthew Semmelsberger minus 130. Yeah, I don't know. Just too many unknowns, right? Too many risk factors on both. Preston gets hit too much. Matthew fades way too often. Kind of a no bet for me, but I'm going to go with Matthew Semmelsberger on that one. I think he's going to piece him up and potentially knock him out. I think there's a really good chance. All right. Andrei Arlovski versus Waldo Cortez Acosta. Andrei Arlovski coming off a really bad KO loss versus Don'Tale Mayes, who doesn't knock out anyone. He's a can crusher, in my opinion. He lost to Marcos Rogerio de Lima, just got completely starched. Barely got by Jake Collier and Jared Vendetta 2 fights before. I think this is going to be Andrei's probably last few fights in the UFC. And I think Waldo Cortez has the perfect style to do well against Andrei Arlovski. Waldo has really good hands for his size, really good power. He's got a good tank. He has struggled with leg kicks, but Andrei Arlovski doesn't really kick a lot. He's primarily a counter striker. And I think Andrei Arlovski's going to have a lot of trouble with Waldo's pressure and boxing and length. I think this is the perfect matchup for Waldo because Andrei is not going to be pressuring him, so Waldo's not going to get tired. He's not going to have to deal with a ton of leg kicks, and I think Waldo's going to come out on this one. I think he could potentially knock him out here. I think there's a big chance he knocks him out. All right, and because of the matchup, he's minus 675. Obviously, no real value in there. But Waldo Cortez by knockout might be live, but I'm going to go with Waldo. Next up, we got Phil Haas and Bruno Ferreira. Wow, this is going to be a barn burner. Man. Both guys, really good power. Both coming off of, knockout losses. Especially Phil Haas is just super, super chinny. At this point, it's hard to bet on him. But his last 4 fights did not go the distance. I do not think this is going the distance. And that prop is like minus 675. Bruno Ferreira still not too proven. Yeah, he came off with a big win versus Gregory Rodriguez, but a completely starched by Nursultan Ruzibov, who's obviously a tough guy. But before that, he's pretty much knocked out everyone else. if he doesn't knock out Phil Haas, I think Phil Haas is obviously going to have an advantage with the striking, potentially the cardio. But I'm just so worried about Phil Haas. Um, I mean, I guess I'm going to go Phil Haas. Just it's so hard to bet on Phil Haas. You know, I'm really afraid he's going to get knocked out. But I'm just going to go with Phil Haas just because of the more technical side. He's had more experience. Bruno Ferreira, not that much experience so far, unproven. If this gets out of the first round, I think Phil Haas should have an advantage at least. So I'm going to go with Phil Haas. You know, I don't really see any value in that fight though. But Ricky Simon versus Mario Batista, this is going to be one of the better fights on the card because Ricky Simon is a really solid fighter. You know, he couldn't do much versus Yadong Song, but Yadong is obviously, you know, top 2, top 3, top 4 in the UFC. Besides that, he's looked really good versus everyone else. Good striking, not the best, but good enough. Good wrestling, really good cardio, right? And he's had, I mean, this guy's a veteran right now, and he's 31, so he's still pretty young. Mario Batista has looked really good too. Really good cardio. He's coming off a 5 fight win streak. Did really good versus Damon Blackshear, who's pretty tough, and you know, he's a pressure fighter, right? He's a pressure fighter. That's where he gets most of his work done. His boxing, I'd say Ricky Simon has the edge in the striking and the wrestling, but you know, if Mario can really put it on in that second and third round, it's possible he can squeak out a decision. I think it's going to be a good fight. I'm going to go with Ricky Simon. I just think he's better everywhere. I think he has enough cardio to withstand the pressure from Mario Batista. So we are seeing money coming in on Ricky Simon. So, you know, that could be a spot there. I'm trying to figure out a scenario where Mario Batista wins this fight. It's hard to come up with a scenario just because, like I said, the striking is in favor of Ricky, the wrestling, as well as the I think he has good cardio too. He just went 5 rounds with Yadong. So I think that's, you know, pretty decent odds. I do think it goes to the decision, and going to the decision is, I believe, minus 150. I actually like that, and I did take that. All right, but this is not financial advice. So I'm going with Ricky Simon by decision. I think Mario Batista can potentially make it close in the third round, but I think Ricky Simon takes in the first 2. Jim Miller versus Gabriel Benitez. Jim Miller coming off, you know, a win versus Jesse Butler, a newish fighter that doesn't really prove much, but it, you know, keeps him active. That was in June. Before that, he got pieced up by Alexander Hernandez, who's not honestly the best striker, and he has not had a good career in the UFC so far. So that's a pretty bad loss. Before that, he beat Donald Cerrone, you know, come close to retirement. Nicholas Mota, right? He lost to Joe Selecki, Vince Pichel. You know, and Jim Miller comes out strong, but he tends to fade in the later rounds. But he does have knockout power in that first round, which should concern Gabriel Benitez because Gabriel Benitez has been knocked out quite a bit in these last few years by Sadiq, Billy Quarantillo, David Onama. But I think if Gabriel can withstand Jim Miller's first round barrage, I think it's going to favor Gabriel heavily. He's better striking, he's quicker, he also has a lot of power. And I think he's going to give Jim Miller a lot of trouble if it gets to the second and third round. So I'm going to go with Gabriel Benitez. I just think he's better all around striking. I do think Jim Miller's tough, so he's going to put up a fight. The only thing is Gabriel Benitez is coming off a really long layoff, 2 years, and that's going to be hard to deal with in the first round. Maybe even the whole fight, because Jim Miller's been in better shape. You know, but Gabriel has been training. You know, I'm just afraid of the ring rust, so I'm not really willing to, you know, if anything, let's see the line though. Jim Miller minus 140. Yeah, and I think that's because of the layoff of Gabriel Benitez. Um, you know, it's hard to pick. It's hard to pick. I think because of the layoff, I will go with Jim Miller just because he's been more active, and I think he's going to give Gabriel a lot of trouble with the pressure. So I think he does, win this fight versus Gabriel. All right, and then last fight, Magomed, Mateus Nicolau versus Manel Kape. So these guys actually fought. This is a rematch. Mateus Nicolau, I don't think he's gotten that much better. He sort of just fights the same way every fight. Counter puncher on the outside. His takedowns are, he's got some decent takedowns, but in that first fight versus Manel, he showed that he can't consistently keep him there for the whole fight, and I think that's going to be a big problem because Manel has actually looked much improved since that last fight. He's won 4 fights in a row, looked really good versus Felipe dos Santos. He looks like his cardio is much better. He looks like he puts on way more pressure. I think he's going to be ready to go versus Mateus Nicolau. I think it's going to be he's going to be able to better work on the takedowns. He's got a read on Mateus, probably at this point better reads from that first fight, and I think this is going to be a tough matchup versus Mateus. I don't think his striking has improved as much as Manel Kape's. I don't think his power is there. He's really tough, Mateus, but he just came off a really bad knockout loss versus Brandon Royval, who is tough. I'm going to go with Manel Kape here. And the odds say, put him as a pretty heavy favorite. Man, I do think Mateus is going to have some moments here, just like he did in the first round, in the first fight. But I think Manel Kape's going to run away with this. Yeah, and my prediction is in that first round, Manel's going to get some reads and start to piece him up pretty good. He does get hit often, but he's got a good chin. Mateus, I think he's going to be a little bit shell shocked from that last fight and hesitant. So I'm going to go with Manel Kape on that one. But I think it's going to go the distance. Let's see here. Yeah, no or yes. I do think, obviously, Manel is going to land more strikes. So if there's a striking prop, I would like for that to happen. But yeah, I think it's probably going to go the distance, and Manel Kape's going to win. Last fight, Magomed Ankalaev versus Johnny Walker. Magomed Ankalaev showing that he can just get it done, he split draw versus Jan. He was losing that fight 5 rounds, but he went 5 rounds and came through in the end, took him down. He's got really good takedowns, good counters, good power, but we've seen that he struggles with leg kicks, and Jan really exposed that. And last fight, Johnny Walker was going those kicks early on, and we saw Magomed didn't like that. Johnny Walker has looked much better these last few fights versus Paul Craig, Anthony Smith, although Anthony Smith's on his way out. He was actually doing decent on the feet versus Magomed before he got taken down. But what worries me is that he got taken down so easily, and he just got held there. I think if it wasn't for that knee, Magomed probably would have kept him there for the whole fight. And what worries me is that Johnny Walker versus good competition, he just comes up with an excuse to just not do well. I don't know. He just... I feel like Johnny Walker, those shenanigans he pulled, he did it on purpose. That's just my opinion. Like, he's good enough at English to know what the doctor is saying, and he's been in this game for so long, 28 losses, to be like, no, I'm good. Let's go. But then after the ref stopped the fight, it was so obvious that the ref stopped the fight, but Johnny Walker was like, no, I want to fight now. Like, he was like acting like he didn't do it. So I don't like that. I think that's a huge sign of weakness and, low confidence against Magomed Ankalaev. I think if the only way Johnny Walker wins is if he keeps us on the feet. I don't think Magomed's going to allow that. I think Magomed's going to pressure, keep him on the fence, and just grind him out. And I think Magomed has better cardio versus Johnny Walker too. So I think Magomed's going to win. The line is pretty steep. Magomed minus 500. I mean, I would never go with that. Honestly, I might even sprinkle a little bit on Johnny Walker plus 395, and just hope that he's able to, kick his legs and give him trouble, and maybe squeak out a win. But in terms of props, I would look at the takedown prop and look at what that is going to be, because I think 100% Magomed is going to get more takedowns. So yeah, guys, that is my prediction for UFC. If you guys like this video, hit the like and subscribe button. I will be coming out with more videos in the future, guys. All right, so have a good one and good luck out there.